It's not about what you have. It's about who you have. It's not about where you live. It's about how you live. And it's not about what you do. It's about why you do it. Welcome to the Momentasize Podcast. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Today I've got a special guest, a coach of mine, somebody who's been a mentor of mine, a good friend. We've grown. I bought into their coaching program, and then we've grown. He's a great investor. He's in North Carolina. They're doing over $2 million a year in his wholesaling operation, but he goes, it's not just wholesaling. He's a great, well-rounded investor. Without further ado, please help me welcome Michael FitzGerald to the podcast.
Awesome, man. I appreciate you having me, dude. It's been a while. I'm glad to connect. Yeah,
me too. It's funny what's so cool about social media, or even, a world where like the social media connecting piece, we've met each other one or two times in person, but we really get to know each other just through Zoom calls just like this. That's pretty cool to be able to do that.
Right. Yeah. You don't even realize like so many people, I'm like, man, you know what? I've actually never met that person in person, but like I've had so many good quality conversations, coaching calls, all that good stuff. And you really, really kind of feel like you know somebody.
Yeah, it's pretty special. Michael, for people who don't know you, give us just a quick background on Michael FitzGerald.
Yeah, man, for sure. So, I live in North Carolina, live in a small mountain town, Asheville, North Carolina. It's kind of known for tourism and the beer scene. I've been here since 2018. It's where my wife grew up, so she really wanted to move the family back that way. I've always been a soccer player. I knew you were a college soccer guy, so like I finished my college soccer career, played 1 year pro, and then I got into working for soccer.com. So like a big online soccer retailer, and I just had a sales job, and I knew I always kind of wanted a little bit more, and that's when I started getting, the bug on real estate, learned a little bit about it, and I would just take my sales bonus every year and, buy a piece of property. And I thought that was kind of the way real estate works. It's like, hey man, 20% down payment, you can buy a rental property, and after X amount of years, you can get to a place of like retirement or offset your income from your 9 to 5. And that's kind of the hustle that I did for a few years until I learned a little bit more about private money, the active side of investing. Then I went to go work for a developer, quit my job at soccer.com, went to go work for this developer to learn all about, the active side of investing and what else you can do with it. And did that for about 2 years before I said, hey, you know what? Time to take the training wheels off, jump into this thing on my own.
I love it. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of wild how many entrepreneurs also had a sports background. Like a lot of people I meet who have their own business also had some sort of competitive sport background and played sports, because it must be like there just must be a connection there with like the competitive piece. There's something, right? There's something between entrepreneurs and sports. I'm super connected with that.
Oh,
so it's
absolutely, yeah. I mean, if you just think about everything that you're learning, from kind of like the training, the discipline, the teamwork, kind of having to get focused, having to work when other people aren't working, that's kind of where you get your edge. It just translates so well to being an entrepreneur and, working for yourself. And I mean, you get what you put in.
You get what you put in. Let's unpack quickly I know you said you got the real estate bug is essentially what happened, but let's unpack that piece of you worked for somebody else for a couple years. Let's talk a little bit about when you pulled the trigger to start working for just yourself. What was that like? What was it? What were you going through, and what opportunities did you see? Like, what did you do when you started working for yourself?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, what I was doing while I was, working for this other guy, he was doing ground up construction. He was doing kind of infill, tear down, new build, and some of these like gentrifying neighborhoods really close inside the urban core. So I learned a ton because I didn't really get a lot of direction. It wasn't like, hey, here's a marketing budget. This is how you talk to people. It was like, hey, here are the 2 neighborhoods that we're building in. Go find me some lots. And that was like it. And it was like, all right, let's figure it out. So like we were just kind of taking the entire list of what those neighborhoods were, and I'm just cold calling. I'm figuring out my process of what's working, what's not working, how to connect with people. And I was also physical in the area. So I'm driving the streets. if someone's outside, I'm getting out, I'm talking to them. I'm kind of knocking on doors, and I'm really just fully immersed in the overall kind of what that whole lifestyle looks like. So I learned a ton in a very short period of time. It was really kind of like trial by fire. And what I took from that experience was just all of the confidence in the world to say, hey, I can do this on my own. Obviously I didn't have kind of the construction background. I didn't have the construction knowledge. I was literally just there in acquisitions, acquiring, properties and opportunities for him. But what I was able to take from that is there's only so many construction opportunities. So we had to kind of branch out a little bit further and market in different ways, even in areas that he wasn't building. And so once we got these great deals and negotiated these good deals, it was like, well, we don't want to build here, but I bet somebody else does, or somebody else wants that property for another reason. So then it kind of like put together, not just talking to sellers, but now talking to other investors, talking to buyers, figuring it out. And that was really, in my mind, like, that's all there is to it. So, and it was just kind of happenstance that my wife was really pushing to move back to the town that she grew up in. And that's when I was just like, you know what? Let's do it. I don't have to physically be here. I know I can bet on myself and I can go all into this. And, everything I've learned over the past couple of years, I shouldn't be scared of it. I should just kind of attack it. And that's exactly what we did.
Yeah, I love that, right? Like, I think betting on yourself is one of the most important things, but there's this weird thing that happens, right? Like this idea of job security, we've been sold this idea of job security so that if you work for somebody else, we got balloons, there's a party going on. It must be the quotes, man.
Yeah.
There's this idea of job security. And I think it's funny because just like many things in life, it's the opposite, right? You think you have job security, but your destiny is in the hands of somebody else. And so, it's really cool that one, you had the belief in yourself, and two, you had the wife that then was backing you, because that you're like, hey, yeah, I believe myself. I'm going to bet on myself. And then once you bet on yourself and you jump off the cliff, like you have no other option but to fly, right? You have to learn how to fly. So I love that, man. Yeah. I think it's really, really cool. And like you said, like it's a cliche for a reason, but real estate is a relationship game. So if you can just go out and build genuine relationships with people and then have some street smarts on how to analyze deals, boom, you're really going to put yourself at an advantage.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, it's so much about relationships and reputation, and it's such a small world too, that like, if you're going to act outside of integrity in anything, I mean, it's not going to help anybody do anything. So like treating people the right way, treating people good, it's all going to come around. I mean, it's just the law of reciprocity, man. You do good, and good's going to come.
Yeah, you gave me chills right there, because my father, who's a phenomenal businessman, an amazing mentor of mine, he instilled in us as children, and then as I grew my business and started my own business, he instilled this mindset of win-win or no deal. If both parties don't win in the transaction, then it's not a good thing. And some business people, they just want to win themselves. They're like, they want to win. They want the upper hand on you. And if you lose, no problem. They like that part of the game. They think it's a dog eat dog thing. And sure, there's an isolated amount of people that have that. But like you said, if you do that and you're in a transaction, because I've been in that, and you get burned, that leaves a bad taste in the other party's mouth, right? And so he always instilled in us that win-win or no deal. And that's what I think creates a long-lasting company and a long-lasting culture. So you gave me chills when you said that, because it is the law of reciprocity, right? It truly, truly is, and I like that. That makes me know you're a great, phenomenal businessman. Talk to us a little bit about, you made the jump. You have your own business, and now you're doing $2 million on the whole side of the business. That doesn't include the investment pieces that you're doing, picking off yourself. Like, what does a $2 million wholesaling company look like?
Yeah, so right now it actually looks quite a bit different than it did last year, when I was physically had an office, had 10 people in the office with me. I had kind of created this system and almost like this job for myself. I've never been kind of an office guy or a corporate guy, or really felt like, hey, you know what? I need to be here. I need to show up. I need to physically be there to move the needle. But that's what it was for, when my first year, 2019, I think we did like 600,000. The next year we really kind of got some steam. It was just me and one acquisitions guy, and he was learning. We went to 1.1 million. And then from there I was like, you know what? I net a ton, but I wanted to reinvest that into figuring out like some systems and people and hiring and actually building a company and moving from that entrepreneur or the solopreneur to the entrepreneur, less of the hustle, more of the predictable business. And that was tough. That was like completely different skill set, completely different mindset. the whole adage of like, hey, if you keep doing the same thing, you're going to get the same results. I had to become a different person and look at different things that I was doing. And that was the biggest struggle for me, was probably 21 and 22, was like figuring out now how to be the business leader, how to have these people in this office interacting in this way, following certain systems, me not being as involved in like the deals and the transactions. And that was a really difficult shift for me. And then finally I brought in like an actual integrator, like a COO to it, at the end of 2022. And I learned a lot through that as well. So that didn't go as well as I thought it would the very first time. It was my first time hiring kind of like a higher level person. So I kind of was fed the ideas that, hey, go get a headhunter, find somebody, he had an MBA, had, various degrees, and had on paper, all of the information and knowledge and everything you need to run a company. But he didn't really have the experience. He didn't have the same mindset, So what I took from that really is, he was good at the things that I wasn't great at. And I always felt like there needed to be that exact kind of relationship where it's like, my strengths and his weaknesses pair up with his strengths and my weaknesses. And it's just that kind of great symbiotic relationship. And that wasn't like really what worked out well for me. And what I learned from that experience is that you really want somebody that shares that similar mindset and really kind of takes ownership, has a little bit of a desire to be an entrepreneur, and is almost like an intrapreneur. And that's exactly what I found from somebody actually in an investment community, from the same community that you and I met in. And she came in probably a little over a year ago and kind of worked her way up from like sales to this and that. And now she runs everything, and I couldn't be happier. And we actually moved everybody out of the office, completely shut it down. And now we have eight employees all over the country in different places. And we figured out this really great virtual model, building a really cool virtual culture, which is brand new to me. Figuring out how to, build and track upon metrics, keep things scalable in a way where we're never interacting in person. And so that's been really cool. And we're doing better than we ever have before. And I think it all kind of comes down to the people that we're able to attract that are just much different, have different mindset. 7 out of the 8 people that we have right now all came from that same investment community that you and I met in. And they've just kind of, they have that entrepreneur spirit, but they want to be able to like fit inside someone else's organization and follow with their vision. And dude, it's just kind of like this snowball, and it's been going really well, and I love it.
I love it, man. I love it. It's isn't that wild how like you have these quick iterations. You go from solarpreneur, like the solar entrepreneur, like you said, you did 600,000, then you did 1.1 with one other person, but you were just probably wearing every hat. Like you were probably burning candles at all. Like, was it just wild or what?
Oh yeah. It was one of those things where like you kind of look up at the end of the year and you're like, holy crap, like what happened? Like I don't remember a ton of things with my kids, with my wife, with any of this kind of stuff. And it was just like, my wife and I were like, hey, something's got to change. Yeah, it's great. We're making a ton of money, especially kind of from where I came from. It was like, man, this is a significant change. But it wasn't really worth it. It set me up really well to now have money to invest in kind of the building the business. But man, it was like I just blacked out for an entire year, and here we were. And yeah, I learned a ton. I got a ton of reps in, talking to sellers, talking to buyers, figuring out transactions and better efficiencies within the wholesale side of the company. But it was tough, man. It was a tough year.
Yeah, I mean it's a pretty wild thing to hear. And again, you give me chills twice now. You look up, like you said, you look up and you almost blacked out for a whole year, meaning you missed moments with your family, you missed all these moments. You hit these goals, these financial goals you had, but then what gave me chills was, and look at these things. What gave me chills was what you said at the very end there, which was you looked up and you're like, it wasn't even worth it. So something needs to change. It's actually why I open the podcast up the way that I do. It's the money piece, although it's just one small little bucket in the game that we're playing. And it's really making those moments and those experiences with your family that count. And I know it's really cool that you had the self-awareness on that and then pivoted, because I know a year later you changed it. You started, like you said, then you brought on 10 employees, and you also even did a stint where you're like, hey, I'm not letting this happen again. And you brought your family to Hawaii for 1 or 2 months, right? And you ran, or maybe even 3, and you ran. So you pivoted, which was pretty cool. Didn't you do that? Didn't you like decide like, hey, I'm going to now I'm going to go and move to Hawaii for a couple months?
Yeah, so that was actually somewhat of the breaking point, where I had like outsourced a handful of the operational stuff, and it was going really well. Like the acquisitions was still moving along really well without me having to be involved, like super hardcore. We got, some really good understanding of the transaction process. And it was in January that, my wife and I were like, hey, what's next? What can we do to mix it up a little bit? And it was her idea. We got super inspired. We're like, let's move to Hawaii for the winter. So we went from January through April. It was an incredible experience. The fact that like that was also like the training wheels to try out, hey, can I move this whole thing virtual? Because at that point I had a whole office back in North Carolina with all of the employees in there, and I was the only one that was remote. And just to kind of preface it, we've always done remote and virtual wholesale model. We're never going out to properties, even when we had the office. We just had the office to be there to collaborate as a team. So not a ton changed on the real estate side of things. It just changed in the fact that, hey, now we're in this separate area. How can we build a core or a culture being completely remote? But yeah, that experience in Hawaii was amazing. Giant time difference. So I was up at like, 4 a.m., popping on a meeting, running a huddle. But it was still great because like I was done with everything by like 10, 11 o'clock in the day. And I just had the entire day to explore the island, with my family. And it was really cool.
Yeah, I love it, man. And that's what's so cool about when you going back to betting on yourself, starting your own business, and then designing your life the way that you want, right? Like it's so cool to be able to see that, yeah, the first couple years are going to be hard. Like you didn't have that luxury right away. It's a stepping stone, right? It took some time, but then all of a sudden, next thing you know, like you said, you and your wife were like, hey, let's change it up. From January to April, you moved to Hawaii, and you're able to design your life in a way that really mattered to you. And that's what's so cool about when you bet on yourself and stay with it and don't give up, right? It's pretty special. I'm really curious because culture for our company, culture is one of the most important pieces. And, we have projects just in the same state, but different regions. So I have a coast region and a central Oregon region. And I'm even having a hard time bridging that gap on making sure that our people on the coast don't feel isolated versus our people in central Oregon where our main office is, right? How are you building culture remotely when now everybody's virtual? What are you guys doing to build culture like that?
Yeah, so it's been really cool because we've all gotten to know each other very well through, just kind of like onboarding. We'll spend a lot of time up front, just to kind of understand each other. We do a Monday morning meeting for an hour with everybody on the team on it. It's not necessarily just about kind of reviewing metrics and looking at the previous week. We're going to start every single one of those meetings with like probably 5 minutes per person where they're really kind of going through kind of like updates, wins, life wins, not even about the business, just so that we can kind of all celebrate together and expressing kind of that gratitude. Everybody on the team's coming from that same similar mindset. So like we condensed everything over to Microsoft Teams, and we have a channel kind of for everything. We have a channel for like life wins and updates. So everybody's sharing different things that they're excited about, different books that they're reading, different podcasts that they've listened to. And now it's like all about personal development, and everybody kind of sees through that same lens. We're very big on like everybody knowing and having and sharing exactly what our core values are. So the name of our company is Worthy Offer Team. It's actually my middle name, and it's a family name, and it just has a much bigger, different meaning to me. And we do something called the Worthy Award every month, and it's for the person who has embodied, the most core values out of the team. And we want to make sure that we're putting that on display and making sure that everybody else sees this is how this person has kind of shown their core values to the rest of the team, to our clients, to our customers. And they get a $500, award for that month. And then we get another $500 that gets donated to a charity of their choice. So it's cool to really kind of bring everybody together, and everybody's trying to, out worthy and out, core value the other. And it breeds that fun level of competition and excitement for all of us to share and win together. So that's been a big piece of getting excited together.
I love it. See, these podcasts are so cool because they're like they're like time capsules, but they're also like little mini masterminds because we do a similar thing. We have a meeting once a week. It's similar structure, but that teams piece we're missing. We have like individual group texts between, but it's always about it's always usually about work. And every once in a while we'll have like some banter that comes in, and those are my favorite moments. But I think doing that teams and having your core values, are there having everything in that teams chat, sharing your wins all the time, or even your losses, right? I think that's a really smart. So we're going to model that. I mean, I'd love to actually sit in on like one of those if you're comfortable with that, just to see how it's run and just understand, what it looks like. Cause there's so much power. And, thanks for sharing that. That's what are the core values? What are the core values?
So our core values are integrity, growth, resourcefulness, accountability, and service. And when we used to be in the office in person, we would do like a service event together. We used to do it quarterly. So we would spend a full day out of the office, all kind of bonding together and just going to serve, somebody else or some other organization in the community. And that was really great because it builds a lot of bonds. And I think that's what we want to work towards. Granted, we have people we're in Iowa, Texas, Florida, we had somebody in Massachusetts. So it's all over the place, but I would like to get to a point to where we can do, if not quarterly, at least kind of like biannual, trips together with like a service component and just kind of all getting together. Cause that's when you're really kind of building and deepening those bonds and relationships.
Sounds like we got a worthy week coming, a worthy week where the team gets together. And that's, I love it. I think, what's so cool about that is, culture can only be built when it's prioritized. And even if it's remote, like you said, it's at the forefront of what you guys are doing. And it's really cool to hear that you guys are so united in those core values. You're so united. Sure, you all love real estate, right? Because that's part of the game, but you're also so united in those core values of serving and growing and the integrity pieces, right? It really, that's what matters the most. And it's cool when you can get like all these minds together around a culture and a core value. And then everybody, like you said, you have a bunch of entrepreneurs, these entrepreneurial spirits who align with your core values and they love real estate as well. Now you guys come together. You got this super vehicle that produces $2 million of wholesaling a year, baby. So cool. So cool. I know. Okay. So we touched on the wholesaling piece, but I know that that's just one component of your business. That's really, we would call it like your major operating business. Let's touch a little bit more on just your real estate investments and your mindset around real estate investing in general, because you're a really well-rounded real estate investor.
Yeah. And that was one of the things that the reason I first got excited and inspired about real estate was, the wealth building vehicle, it just slowly over time. I was all about kind of like, how can I get rich slowly? I don't know why. I was just kind of the opposite of kind of like hey, need the car, need this, need that, need to get rich quick thing. I was always just like, like I kind of like my job. I like everybody I work with. It's got some cool perks. We're doing some cool events with soccer.com and all these people. And I was like, dude, I'll just continue buying houses. And, when it does come time, I'll have this nice little, net worth nest egg of houses. And that still is where I'm trying to get back to that being my core. For me, almost like, I don't want to say it was, a shiny object, but wholesaling, when I found out how much money I could make, I was like, all right, well, this is kind of cool too. But I didn't love it the same way that I loved the idea of just continuing to build wealth, and build wealth passively through all of the things that come involved with holding property. So that was really kind of like my core, and that was what I wanted to get back to. And I'm still kind of working on the balancing act of those two things. So I started by buying rentals. As we were making more money in the wholesale side, I'm still putting money into rentals and buying rentals. And then also too, as we started getting really good at direct to seller marketing, there's leads and there's opportunities coming in all these different directions and different parts of the state to where I don't have systems. But I'm like, man, I want to buy that one. It's a great rental property. So then I started kind of acquiring rentals all over the place without really good systems or processes or managers or any of that kind of stuff. And then I found out when I did a time audit on myself where I'm really spending a lot of my time, and it's in the weeds of the admin work required to, do an eviction or to like fix these different houses that are in these different areas where I don't have teams. and it got to be a lot. So that's where I wanted to really figure out where my focus could be. And now we're looking at multifamily purchases in Eastern Tennessee, which is about an hour away from me, to really focus and fine tune that right there and leverage the same relationships over and over again with brokers, with banks, with private money. So that's a focus. Wholesaling right now in a very specific niche market is a focus. But along the way, man, I chased all of these different things because I like the educational side of it. You know, I want to say for a whole year, what I was doing instead of wholesaling properties was I would buy them, and then I would sell them on seller finance notes, and I, acquired some mortgages. So now I own, 8 notes that pay me passively, and I love them. They're better than rental properties in my mind because it's like you set up a servicing company, and now you just get these payments coming in every single month. There's no expenses involved. It's just payments coming in. And if you look at them the right way and analyze them the right way, you're getting, 30% return, or sometimes you're getting these infinite returns because you might find a property that's just terrible. It needs a ton of work for $50K, but you might be able to sell or finance it for $100K to a family who's like, dude, yeah, I can't get a mortgage anyways. I'm super handy. I don't mind going in and fixing all this kind of stuff up because I know at the end of the day, it's worth $150. And that's a win-win for everybody. They put a $50K down payment in there, and now you have this mortgage or this note coming in where you have no money in it. So I got excited about that for a while, and and it's really just finding the stuff that you really like doing and that fits your lifestyle and kicks off a return for you to be able to live the life that you want. And I just got excited about learning all these various pieces of real estate. And that's what got me pumped, but it also takes me away from could we have had a $4 million wholesale business at this point if that was my primary focus? Probably, but I kind of also enjoyed, looking at different deals from different eyes and learning all the different components that are involved in real estate.
Yeah, man, that's like a true entrepreneur, right? Like it's the classic entrepreneur syndrome. You get one thing going and it's going decent, and then you're like, okay, what's next? One thing going, right. Okay, what's next, right? And then it's really cool to hear. You're a couple steps ahead of me, but it's cool to hear because a similar thing where, there's all these opportunities, or I hear about wholesaling. I'm like, okay, hey, can I go and take a bite at the wholesaling? Or you hear about, exactly like you said, you hear about becoming the bank. That's really exciting. And the challenge that comes up when you have that shiny object syndrome, and it's not necessarily a bad thing as long as you execute on it, right? Like holding 8 notes on a creative finance situation, that's not a bad thing necessarily. But when you look at things that become really successful and provide a lot of value, it's doing the same thing for an extremely long time and constantly trying to make it better and reinvesting and making it better, right? So picking that one thing that can scale properly, because you could also pick that one thing, do it for a long time, and it was like the wrong pond. You're in the wrong pond. Well, then you got an issue, right? And so it's picking that one thing, because exactly like you said, where focus goes, energy flows. And so really pinpointing where you want your focus to be is key, especially, which is really hard for entrepreneurs, especially for entrepreneurs. So what I'm hearing you say is you're like, okay, I'm going to continue to build this culture in my wholesaling operating business. I don't like the day-to-day necessarily of the wholesaling. Like passion doesn't pour out of you when you're doing it, but it's a great vehicle. So you're going to build that. You love the team. You're going to build that up, focus on making that the best vehicle it can be. And then you're going to focus on multifamily is going to be the big, like you have a specific area, but multifamily is really where you're finding bang for the buck. Is that because it's just more units isolated in one area rather than spread out across a larger distance, or what made you decide multifamily?
Yeah, absolutely. When I look at kind of the economies of scale versus having all of these different houses compared to just having one building, it just makes a ton of sense. So we bought a 45 unit there in 2022, and I literally spend no time on it at all.
Yeah.
But it's not something that really makes me money. I mean, you would be kind of surprised by that, but I have an investor in it, but we have great debt on it. It's getting paid down every month. My investor's getting paid every month. And then anything on top of the preferred return for that, I make, plus I make an acquisition fee. So there's definitely, some money in it, but it's the long game, we're forcing appreciation by adding value to the buildings. We're raising the rents to market. The debt's getting paid down by other people. And it's that's the long game. 5 years from now, when we refinance or sell, there'll be a big chunk of money. And that's why it's good to be well-rounded, because I make money from the wholesale company that's producing the active income that I get paid from, while I can now reinvest in these other assets that have all of the other benefits of real estate. When I bought that building, I was able to offset all of my taxable income from the wholesale business for that year, just in that one building. So plus, the forced appreciation, the debt pay down, the tax benefits, all that kind of stuff is what's so exciting about owning real estate and continuing to buy and hold real estate. And I just like the idea of having it set in one specific location, getting to know it really, really well, having a great management team in place. And it's just, when you look at it, you kind of got to look at what serves the life that you want to design. And when I look at the amount of time that I spend in stuff like that, it's very passive. It feels very passive. I love it. Just adding more into that is where I could see, really kind of the returns from the net worth side, from wealth building. And I took it from, in 2020, it's funny because that year that I was, making, a lot of money with just me and the one guy, it was funny too, because I was running my wholesale company out of a single wide trailer in a mobile home park that I was one of the owners of. And that was also kind of just from a situation of just putting myself out there, letting people know what I'm doing, what I'm interested in. And it was kind of a serendipity moment of the guy that I met that was looking for mobile home parks in my, area. I found him a great opportunity, not even necessarily from my wholesale company, but just from me talking to people and deal finding and, networking. Was able to kind of roll my equity of finder's fee into the equity there. Plus I was able to get a management fee for managing that park and another park that he had about 20 minutes away. So I really learned what that looked like on the inside of commercial real estate transactions. I was managing myself with no experience, 170 mobile home lots, from a single wide trailer while running, a $1 million wholesale company with me sitting in all the seats. So there was a lot going on that year. But what I saw from that as kind of my equity, continued to grow with the forced appreciation we were doing by adding value to these communities. And then, I got a buyout in that, and I saw what hit my bank account. I was like, wow, it would have taken me a lot of wholesale deals to get that money coming into my bank account. I think there's something there, and that's where I kind of need to focus versus buying houses here and houses there and, managing the individual rentals and all that kind of stuff. It was tough. So when I looked at how little time and, with the right systems, managing 170 mobile home lots took me while I was still able to run my other business, that's where I said, hey, this is a lot different than managing 10 single family homes even, and it's all about the systems. And yeah, it is one of those things where it's boring. You're doing the same thing over and over again, but if you're doing it right, you can stack in more and more and more and people on top of those systems. And now that's a business.
That's a real business. Exactly. There's two sayings that came to mind when you said it. One is it takes just as much time to do a big deal as it does a small deal. And I've learned that through and through. It takes just as much time from an approval side to build an 84 unit than it does a 24 unit. Right? And so knowing that, you might as well push for the big deals. I know sometimes the numbers sound bigger and they're scarier, but it takes just as much time. So that one is, it's a really good one. I always try to remember. And then the other one was, just hearing you talk through, and then I'll dive into my next question, but hearing you talk through even how you set that mobile home deal up. What's so cool about real estate is it's two things. It's the numbers, right? Like the number approach or the scientific approach, but then it's also the creativity. So whatever you can create, like the creative mind that you can put deals together and adjust. And, somebody might be listening and be like, Michael, I have no idea what you just said. It's because you're using both your number brain and your creative brain and what resources and problems you can solve. And that's what I love is you get this crazy mix between street starts, factual logic on numbers and then creativity on how to solve a problem. So
yeah, it's really cool. And that's what I get so excited about, man, is just all of the different various components and creativity that you can do with each and every deal. And that's why I haven't said, hey, let's let's go build this $4 million wholesale company, because every deal that comes through, there's so many options to like maximize the return and structure things differently to produce that win-win, because what works for one seller isn't going to be the best situation for another seller. And when you look at buying bigger assets, if you can structure something really cool with the seller, I mean, a lot of times sellers aren't as concerned about the interest rate if they're going to sell or finance it to you as they are, you know, the number that they're getting monthly, because they might have, you know, X amount of bills or X amount of things in lifestyle that they're doing within their retirement. You know, we recently did a deal where we did 0% interest for 15 years, and the note payment going out to him is exactly what he was looking for. And I didn't necessarily care what the purchase price was. It didn't matter to me, because when you put it on paper, you see that the 0% interest is much more attractive than what we would be paying for it. And that's why I'll do real estate forever, just because it's fun to get into the weeds and structure the deals to be able to create those win-wins.
Yeah, and I mean, what's so cool about that too is the only way that you could get to a structure like that is using questions in psychology to figure out what the seller actually needs and what they actually want. So I'm sure, do you guys have like a series of ways that you approach sellers to understand what their true problem is, so you can then provide a couple different options to solve it?
Yeah, absolutely. We get really deep into the sales process. But what's tricky with that is, in order to really scale, when you're putting people in place to do the deals and put those kind of things together, not everybody's going to come with that same creative mind. A lot of people that you're going to be hiring are going to need a script, and they're going to follow a script. Yeah. And the less options that you're putting in front of them, the more of an expert they're going to become in that one option. And that's why wholesale is the primary piece there, because it's figuring out what those pain points are, understanding what that person's looking to solve, and then we come in and we solve it. And we try to find as many creative ways to solve it as possible, but really, in order to like have it be a system with salespeople, you really need it to be a predictable, scripted system. So I don't even want to teach everybody, hey, if they say no to this, then try this. If they say no to this, then try this, because then it's going to take a salesperson's brain and say, wait, what? Can we simplify it? But the ones that I know that I want to keep, that's when I'll get on the phone, or that's when I'll say, hey, pass it over to me, or I want to talk to this person. I want to dig in a little bit more and see if we can solve their problem, because I think we can. I think we can do it in a way where I can own this piece of real estate long term, and we can both be really happy with the way that the transaction goes. And in order to prevent me from getting on the phone all the time with all these people, I kind of want to reserve those conversations for the bigger deals and the bigger assets, because it does take time, and you got to follow up and you got to nurture those relationships before you can really structure something where they're like, yeah, I trust you, dude, for 15 years, pay me this amount. That takes a little bit of time. And I've always kind of wanted to protect my time as best as possible and just focus on the things that are going to have the biggest return for the company, for the employees, and for me.
Yeah, you said something that made me think, it's actually funny, made me think of food. So if you give people too many options, everyone's been to the restaurant where they've got like 12 pages and you're reading through it, and your friend's like, what are you going to get? And you're like, dude, I don't even know. I haven't even read through all this. And then everyone's also on the other side experienced, like, you go to In-N-Out, right? And what does In-N-Out have? They have like 3 options on the menu. Yeah. You see exactly what you want to get. And guess what? If you're a continuous customer to In-N-Out, then there is a secret menu that then you can, after you get to know In-N-Out and you go there quite a bit, you can then do animal style fries, which isn't advertised, but it's still an option, right? And so I think you're so right. If you were to give everybody like, hey, these are like the 30 different creative things we could do, you're going to give everyone paralysis by analysis. So you made me think when you said, I'm like, you know what? They're smart. They're smart. Where the offers is like running it like an In-N-Out menu rather than like the Mexican restaurant you go to that has like 12 pages on it. So.
Right. Dude, that's such a good analogy. I appreciate you sharing that. That makes total sense. And if you think about it like that, like a place like Cheesecake Factory or something like that has like so many pages. I get exhausted. I don't even make a decision. Instead, I talk to the waitress and I'm like, hey, can you make me this? And I custom make something because I'm like, dude, I don't know. I'm sure you can do it, but like, can I get a regular cheeseburger with this and that? And it's like, yeah, no problem. Because I don't want to read through all this stuff. And like, I don't know. Yeah. There's too many decisions. You get decision fatigue and then it's like, no, I don't want to do it.
Yeah, I could not agree more. I want to touch really quickly on somebody who might have been listening and they're like, "Wait, Michael, he makes millions of dollars in his wholesaling business, but he said he paid no taxes because he bought apartments. Like, how could he do that? Is that even legal? Like, how do you even do that? Unpack that for us a little bit."
Yeah, so that's just through kind of the cost segregation study where you're basically going to buy anything and they're going to break the buildings down by the individual components, and each piece is going to have a lifespan that you can depreciate. And, with a cost segregation study, you can do a bonus depreciation where you take depreciation on the whole asset within that first year that you bought it. So typically you're going to see like 20 to 40% of what you buy it for is what you're going to be able to take off of, or deduct from your taxable income. So it's a very cool strategy. And if you kind of plan it right and look at it right, it's like, okay, this is what we're forecasting in terms of net income. This is the amount of real estate that I would need to buy and depreciate in order to wipe out the taxable income that I would be getting from my active business. So I've seen a lot of people doing it. We started doing it. I guess the first properties that we started doing cost segregation on was 2021. And what's cool too is you can do it on single family homes. So we bought a beach house for our family in 2021 and we'll rent it out on Airbnb, and you can cost segregate that whole thing. So now we have this place. It's great. We can go whenever we want. We can also cover the mortgage with other people staying in it when we're not using it. And we were able to get a big write-off from purchasing it.
Yeah, exactly. It's you learn the rules of the game and then play it correctly. And, those incentives are there for a reason. They're put in place to incentivize investment. And so it's not illegal. Michael and I have the same exact strategy last year. Through the same mechanisms, we paid zero in tax on, we have our active income and we buy apartments in this, and that's the whole strategy. And it's you can do two things. Sometimes I hear people that hate on it or they hate the game. I'm like, you got to really shift your mindset there, right? Like the rules of the game are there out there for you to learn, and why not go and learn them? Learn what the ultra wealthy are doing and then apply it to your life. And step by step, before you know it, 30 years later, you're part of the ultra wealthy just by doing the get rich slow game like you've been planning on from the very beginning, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. I got super into self-directed retirement account too, just early on, learning about Roth IRAs from my parents when I was a young kid, not really knowing what it meant, but at the same time researching it myself and saying, hey, that's pretty cool. That's a cool way to build something tax-free. And what I always thought was okay, I don't even know what the number is now, but $6,000 a year is what you can put into it, after tax, and that's going to grow tax-free. It's well, how do you possibly ever get that much money in there? If you put it in there and then you put in mutual funds or whatever, because you have that, that contribution maximum, but you don't have an earning maximum. So, say for instance, you put $6,000 into a Roth IRA, I can now use $100 of that as an earnest money deposit on a transaction that I then go and wholesale for $30,000. And now that $30,000 wholesale fee goes back into my Roth IRA. And you can just completely build a Roth IRA bank account through active income doing it just like that. So, you could literally start with $100 in your Roth IRA, do one wholesale transaction. Right now, our average wholesale assignment fee is $25,000. You do one wholesale transaction in there, and now you've basically gotten 3 years worth of max contributions just in one quick transaction of an earning. And once you get it to a point, now you can buy notes from that account. You can buy rental properties from that account. You can create notes from that account that, can target a 30 to 40% return. And that's where you see that real exponential growth happen in these tax deferred accounts. And, when you are 59 and a half and you're able to withdraw from it, you can literally live off of tax-free income off of just, the interest that those accounts are making, and still have a big, huge pile of money there to continue to invest, to give, to pass down to different people. And it's so cool when you start to learn about all the various things that are out there for you to take advantage of that can really serve you and are cool wealth builders.
I hope you guys are listening because Michael just dropped a bomb. And if that didn't make sense, what he's saying, Roth IRA it's a tax deferred account. And what he's doing is he's looking at the rules of that account, and the wholesale one, that's new to me. That's so smart. You can use the money that's in there to put it down on your wholesale contract. That's your earnest money down on the wholesale contract. And then once you assign that, you're going to get your original earnest money back plus the profit. Boom. And then now that's become, what a smart way to look at your options and, without a ton of money. Cause people hear like, oh yeah, you can hear like, oh yeah, you're buying all these apartments and that's how you're deferring the profits on it. No, like Michael just dropped a bomb on another way that you can make it happen, which is, that's cool. I just learned that. Again, that's what I love about doing these things. That is a great way. So specifically self-directed Roth IRA, right? People do some research on that, but that's the mechanism.
Yeah. So I've got, a handful of different self-directed accounts. I think the Roth is the most powerful because that is kind of the tax-free growth account. So that's where I like to do the majority of my stuff, but you can also roll up all of the other accounts into basically a checkbook IRA. So now, like, I have a Roth account for all of my kids. I have a Roth account for my wife. I have my Roth account, and I have a few other of my accounts. And you can have them all go into one entity that is a checkbook IRA, and each one of those Roths can have a different percentage. So now if I go do one deal, and what I was going to say earlier is, like, it's easy to overcomplicate it and not really think about it. So I typically will say, hey, 2 or 3 of my biggest wholesale deals for the year, let me do those out of the Roth. And you could do those out of the Roth like right before closing. It's not something where you have to intentionally go into it. So if I'm like, man, like for instance, the biggest wholesale fee I've made in the single family space was $137,000. I wasn't doing anything with my Roth IRA there, but a week before closing, I said, hey, you know what? Let's assign it to the Roth. And they were like, well, you didn't even put any earnest money in. Okay, great. Well, let's now amend the contract. We're going to put $100 earnest money in. We're going to pull it from the Roth. We're going to put it into the escrow account. And now we're going to close that deal out with the escrow attorney. And now it's $137,000 going into the Roth. And that's like a significant amount of money where you can do different types of transactions in there, because the more money you have in there, the more creative you can be with a deal. You can fully outright buy a house. You can buy something and then sell or finance it from there. There's a lot that you can do in there. But the whole idea there is, let's say you do a $100,000 transaction in there and you have all of your family members with their own Roth set up, and each one has a 20% stake in that Roth IRA checkbook account. Now they're getting 20% of that deal that you just did, and you just set your kids up in one transaction for a Roth IRA that's going to grow tax-free for the rest of their life. So there's all kinds of really cool things that you can do when you start, stacking some of those things. But there's a lot of paperwork and admin stuff that comes with it too. And that can easily distract you when you're in the solopreneur mode, and you're wearing all these different things. So.
Yeah, but you are dropping bombs there for people on ways to protect your wealth, grow your wealth, and then protect it as well through legal mechanisms that are out there for people to learn and then take advantage of. So I love it. I absolutely love it. I know we got a tight timeline because you have one of the most important things, which is a special date with your wife coming up. But what's next for Michael? Like, we talked a lot about what's happened, but what's next? Like, what is next for Michael?
So kind of where we're at right now with the wholesale company, I was telling you, the integrator that I have running stuff, she's incredible. She's really kind of allowed me to step out of a lot of those operational seats. And I'm involved in a 2-hour leadership meeting with her once a week. And, the 1-hour meeting with the whole team once a week. And then I'm there for like coaching guidance, when called upon. But outside of that, I've really kind of been figuring out ways to make the portfolio more efficient. To sell off some of these rentals that are just, bothering me, these single family things in these different areas, and then investing those into kind of a more core focus. I've had a lot more time recently. I'm getting more excited about, the fact that I've been doing this for a long time, but I haven't really had that chance to really start talking to more people and sharing kind of what I'm doing. And that is what really kind of like gets me fired up and gets me excited. Because you can only get to a certain point where you're serving yourself and you're serving your team. Like, it's real. I mean, the name of the game is service. The name of the game is giving back and passing it along to somebody else who can really help them in that position. So I've been writing a book for the last little bit about how you can accomplish freedom in 5 years through real estate. And a lot of that kind of comes down to all of the various aspects that you can do, as a side hustle where you still have a job, just like I did. And then figuring out what you can do from that point to like help other people get out of their position if they're not loving their job, or even if they are loving their job, add some real estate, add some rental properties on the side, and take some of these different strategies and go out and, continue to build your net worth and, build that level of freedom for yourself.
I love it. When does the book come out, Michael? Is it going to come out this year? Like, is it sort of just overall work in progress, or what are you thinking?
Yeah. So it'll come out. It'll come out by the end of the year.
Okay. If somebody's interested in, like, they want to track it when it's released, is there a place we can go yet, or just follow you along, or where do we go to figure out? Because I'm going to read it. Yeah,
definitely follow along. I'm going to start posting a little bit more content about it. It's probably about 2 months from like the full piece being done before going into editing. So follow along. I'll post some stuff about it. I'll have a nice little website for it, so where we can really kind of interact with some different people that I hope that it will be able to like add a lot of value, help people change their life, make a big impact, because that was who I was 5 years ago, that I so desired kind of a little, some knowledge just like that to kind of help me out of my situation. And that's where I'm really feeling called to be able to like help people that are in that same exact situation that I was.
I love it. I cannot wait to read it, and I know it's going to change a lot of people's lives. Michael, last question for you. If you could go back, since you're writing a book on it, we'll do it 5 years, right? If you could go back to yourself 5 years ago, what's something that you would tell Michael 5 years ago?
Man, that's a really good question. But I think it would just be like, dig deep within, like really figure out why you are working on the things that you're working on. Who is it for? What is it for? What is the long game that you're doing with this? Because really, that's where every action is going to come from that core feeling that you have. And for me, looking at it now, then it was, to serve myself. And I think that that's important. I think you can't really help anybody else until you kind of filled your whole cup up. And then it starts to pour over. And so I would just encourage people, figure out what it is that you're called to, that gives you the most energy, that can also make you money. Do that as hard as you possibly can, and then take all of those skills and lessons that you've learned and pour into other people that you see in that same exact spot.
I love it. I love it, man. I absolutely love it. Thank you for that. That's a really good piece of advice. How can people, if people do want to connect with you, we'll put it in the show notes too, but how can they follow you along? How can they get connected with you, Michael?
Yeah, that's good. Reach out to me on Instagram. I'm regularly on there connecting with different people. That's where we found a ton of people from different communities that are now part of our companies that we can, network with pretty regularly. I'm on Instagram at mfitty, or just look up Michael FitzGerald. There's one other investor, Michael FitzGerald. He's a great guy too. So not to confuse us.
Yeah, not to confuse you. You're the more handsome one. So if you find another one, Michael FitzGerald's there. Awesome, man. Well, thank you for taking the time. Thanks for carving it out. I learned a lot of key things just now in culture, but even like the snippets on the Roth IRA, right? So it's cool. You can learn like important cultural things, emotional things, and then also technical things in these conversations. So thanks for dropping your knowledge, your wisdom, and sharing time with us. Absolutely, man. Thanks for having me. It's great to connect with you again. Yeah, we'll do it in person. When next event we go to, we'll got to do it in person because it'll be even better, right? And we'll catch up to see how it all goes. This will be, I definitely can't wait to have you back on. And once the book's released, we'll read it and have you back on about that as well, my friend. Yeah, absolutely, man. Thanks so much. Cool. See ya. And with that, we will see you on the next one, baby.